What if I told you that the voice in your head isn't entirely yours? That your brain rewrites your memories every time you recall them? That your perception of now is already the past? And what you call free will might just be biological theater? These aren't theories. These are unsettling facts, verified by neuroscience, psychology, and quantum physics. Explore the cracks in your perception, the blind spots in your consciousness, and the strange truths your mind was designed to overlook. So if you're ready to question your thoughts, doubt your choices, and feel reality itself bend beneath your feet, tap like, hit subscribe, and step into the hidden architecture of the self, where nothing is quite what it seems. The universe might be a simulation designed to trick you. You live your life believing in solidity, in texture, in weight. You feel the pull of gravity, the heat of the sun, the resistance of surfaces beneath your fingertips. You trust these things, not because you've tested their reality, but because they persist. You touch a wall and expect it to hold. You speak into a room and expect your voice to echo back. There's a rhythm to this existence, a consistency that becomes comforting, even invisible. But what if that comfort is the trick? What if the constancy you take for granted is not proof of truth, but evidence of something else entirely? Imagine waking up one day and discovering that every streetlight, every tree, every stranger's face was generated in real time, not by nature, but by code, not evolved, but rendered. What if this entire universe, with all its beauty and brutality, was just a simulation, crafted not by coincidence or divine hand, but by design? Not a dream, not a hallucination, but a digital architecture so advanced, it fools not just your eyes, but your logic, your memory, your sense of self. It sounds absurd until you start to look closely, and when you do, the seams start to show. Take the Planck length, the smallest unit of space, so small that nothing exists beneath it, as if the pixels of a cosmic screen, or the speed of light. Why should a universe have a speed limit, unless it's processing information, throttling how fast data can move? Even the idea that reality behaves differently when you observe it, doesn't that sound more like rendering, optimization than natural law? In video games, worlds are loaded only when the player approaches. Backgrounds become detailed only when needed. The illusion is seamless, until you peek behind the curtain. And now, physics offers its own curtain. Quantum mechanics, with its particle wave duality and observer-dependent outcomes, suggests a universe that waits to decide what's real until you ask. That's not just poetic, that's computational, and it invites a chilling question. Are you the player, or just the rendered character? Imagine you're walking through a forest. The trees sway gently, leaves crunch beneath your feet. You hear birdsong, feel the sun warming your skin. But what if none of it existed a second ago? What if it was rendered the moment you turned your attention toward it? Not imagined, not fake, but selectively real, called into being by a system, prioritizing efficiency. You aren't hallucinating, you're experiencing reality on demand. In a simulation, resources are precious, so things that aren't observed don't need to exist in full detail, just enough data to recreate them when needed. Schrödinger's cat isn't just a philosophical puzzle, it's a metaphor for computational economy. The cat is both alive and dead until observed, because the system doesn't calculate the outcome until observation demands it. In this light, the observer effect becomes more than a quantum quirk. It becomes a clue, a whisper from the code beneath, the cosmos. And the more clues you gather, the more the world begins to shimmer with unreality. Why do mathematical laws describe nature so precisely? Why is there a smallest measurable time and space? Why does the universe seem fine-tuned for consciousness, our specific kind of experience? These questions become heavier when framed within the simulation hypothesis. Because if the universe was designed, these patterns are not mysterious. They're intentional, constraints of a system, parameters of a program. But then comes the darker thought. If this is a simulation, what is its purpose? Who or what designed it? And why? Are we a test, a work of art, a relic of someone else's curiosity? And, worse, are we being watched, evaluated, ignored? Maybe there's no audience. Maybe the simulation was set in motion and abandoned, like an ancient server left humming in a forgotten lab. Or maybe every moment of your life is being recorded, analyzed, dissected by intelligences so far beyond your comprehension that the idea of privacy, of agency, of identity was never real to begin with. You believe you have free will, that your choices matter. But what if they don't? What if your preferences, your fears, your so-called decisions are all outcomes of hidden algorithms, predictive scripts fine-tuned by countless iterations? You think you're choosing tea over coffee, love over loneliness, peace over chaos. But maybe you're executing a line of code. Maybe the illusion of freedom was part of the design, an emotional lubricant to keep the system running smoothly, because simulated minds that feel free are more stable, more productive, more believable. And still, you might argue, so what if we're in a simulation? If it feels real, isn't that enough? But is it? What is the cost of living in a world where everything could be false? Where the sky above you is not sky, but rendering logic? Where death might not be an ending, but a deletion? Where love, pain, joy, suffering, everything you hold sacred, is just the side effect of code execution? Some say this is liberating, that if we're simulated, then meaning is ours to create. But others feel the vertigo of disconnection, the dread of being untethered from anything absolute. In a natural universe, at least the stars are real. In a simulated one, even the stars are suspect. And yet, the simulation hypothesis offers a strange kind of hope, because if reality is simulated, it was built. And if it was built, maybe it can be hacked, explored, rewritten. Maybe your suffering is not inevitable. Maybe death is not final. Maybe existence is not a gift, but a toolkit, a flexible framework through which you can learn, grow, transcend. But to embrace this possibility is to surrender your old assumptions, to admit that what you see, what you know, what you trust, might not be what you thought. It's to live with uncertainty, not as a problem, but as a feature, a space in which deeper truths can emerge. You begin to see metaphors everywhere. Déjà vu as a rendering glitch, intuition as background code surfacing, dreams as debug environments. The uncanny becomes familiar, the irrational becomes logical, and in that mindset, you stop asking, is this real? And start asking, what can I do with this? That's the shift, from passive recipient to curious participant, from victim of illusion to user within a system. And maybe that's all you need to reclaim your power. Because even if you are code, executed, looped, bounded, you are still aware. You are still choosing. You are still moving through the world, simulated or not, with intention. And what is intention, if not the foundation of reality? What is purpose, if not something you invent, moment by moment? Whether your brain is organic or artificial, your pain and wonder feel the same. Whether your life is rendered or born, your memories still shape you. And if meaning is something you collapse into existence, like a particle resolving into form the moment you look, then maybe meaning was always yours to command, even in a simulation, especially in a simulation. So the next time you wake up and stare at the ceiling, wondering if it's real, know that it doesn't matter. What matters is how you live beneath that ceiling, what kind of pattern you choose to be, what kind of signal you send into the noise. Because even if the world is just code, you are still the one running it. Most of the universe is missing, and we don't know why. You've walked into rooms and felt something missing. Your keys, your phone, a word on the tip of your tongue. But imagine stepping into the universe itself and realizing that almost everything is gone. Not lost, not broken, just absent. Picture a stage where the lights are on, the curtains drawn back, and the actors in place, but 95% of the props, scenery, and substance are invisible. You look up at the night sky and see stars, galaxies, a universe glittering with presence. But what if I told you that everything you can see, touch, measure, or even imagine makes up less than 5% of what's actually there? The rest, the overwhelming majority, is missing, and no one knows where it is, what it's made of, or why it refuses to show itself. We call it dark matter and dark energy, two placeholders. For our ignorance, two invisible titans that shape everything we know without ever letting us see their face. This isn't science fiction. This is modern cosmology. This is the quiet panic of physicists who have realized that the universe is a puzzle missing nearly all its pieces. And the metaphor that comes closest? Imagine reading a novel where every sentence makes sense, but the plot, the characters, the motivation are hidden between the lines, written in ink that no eye can see. That's our universe, a legible illusion floating on a vast sea of mystery. Let's start with what we can see. Stars, planets, dust clouds, galaxies, all of it, collectively, makes up less than 5% of the total matter-energy content of the cosmos. Less than 5. It's like tasting the icing of a cake and calling it dessert, never realizing that the real substance lies beyond your perception. The other 95% is divided between dark matter, about 27%, and dark energy, a staggering 68%. We didn't stumble on these ideas out of curiosity. We were forced to invent them. When astronomers mapped how galaxies spin, they found something strange. The outer stars weren't slowing down as they should. Based on the mass we could account for, these galaxies should have torn themselves apart, but they didn't. Something unseen was holding them together, an invisible scaffolding, like ghost hands gripping their edges. We named it dark matter, not because it's dark like shadows, but because it doesn't interact with light at all. We can't see it, reflect it, or touch it, but it must be there. Otherwise, gravity itself stops making sense. Galaxies would unravel. Clusters would drift apart. The entire large-scale structure of the universe, the vast cosmic web of matter, stretching across billions of light years, would collapse. Dark matter, then, isn't just a curiosity. It's the hidden glue of the cosmos, a silence that binds stars. But the mystery doesn't stop there. In the late 1990s, something even stranger was discovered. Two teams of astronomers, studying distant supernovae, found that the expansion of the universe wasn't slowing down as everyone expected. It was accelerating, not just growing, but growing faster and faster, as if some unseen force was pushing everything outward with increasing speed. This made no sense. Gravity should pull things back together, or at least slow their departure. But instead, space itself was stretching, swelling, racing ahead. To explain this, scientists coined another ghost: dark energy. Unlike dark matter, which pulls, dark energy pushes, a cosmic anti-gravity that seems to fill all of space, driving galaxies apart. But what is it? No one knows. Some think it's the energy of empty space itself, a quantum leftover. Others think it's a placeholder for something we haven't even begun to imagine. But whatever it is, it's enormous. It dominates the energy balance of the universe. We are not just surrounded by mystery, we are immersed in it, floating in an ocean of absence. Think of a painting. You see the brush strokes, the colors, the forms. But what if someone told you the canvas was 95% invisible, and that every shape you admire was suspended on something you can never perceive? That's the modern view of cosmology. The stars are real, the galaxies are real, but they are floating in a medium we cannot name. It's like listening to music but only hearing the melody, never the bass that holds it together. The harmony is implied, the structure is felt, but the substance remains hidden. And perhaps the most haunting part is this: dark matter and dark energy are not things we misunderstood. They are things we never understood. They are not distant theories awaiting confirmation. They are gaps in the middle of our best science, foundations we walk on every day without ever seeing the floor. It's not that we're blind. It's that the universe is playing a different game with rules it hasn't revealed. You might wonder, if we can't see them, how do we know they're real? Because their effects are everywhere. Gravitational lensing, where light from distant galaxies bends around invisible mass. Galaxy formation simulations, where dark matter halos must be included for the structures to match reality. Cosmic microwave background radiation, whose subtle temperature fluctuations encode the fingerprints of both dark matter and dark energy. It's not faith, it's evidence, but it's indirect, like hearing footsteps in an empty room. You know, someone's there, you just can't find them. And this forces us to ask a deeper question. What is real, anyway? Is it what you can touch, see, measure? Or is it what exerts force, what leaves trace, what shapes outcomes? If dark matter and dark energy shape the universe without ever being seen, are they less real or more? And what about us, creatures made of the rare 5%? Are we anomalies, flukes? Did the universe build a stage of emptiness just to let a few lights flicker for a moment? Or are we the tips of icebergs peeking out of a sea of hidden truth? Some theorists wonder if dark matter is made of exotic particles, WIMPs, axions, sterile neutrinos. Others speculate it's not matter at all, but a failure in our understanding of gravity. Some even suggest dark energy is an illusion, an artifact of cosmic perspective. But the more we search, the stranger it gets. Underground detectors built to catch dark matter particles have found nothing. No collisions, no signals, just silence, like chasing a ghost that always stays one step ahead. And yet, if we stop chasing, everything we know collapses. Our models break. The universe becomes an orphan, detached from its own behavior. So we keep hunting, not because we understand, but because we need to. But maybe there's a different way to see it. Maybe the missing universe isn't hiding. Maybe it's teaching, reminding us that knowledge is not ownership, that certainty is not a right. That mystery is not a flaw in the code. It is the code. That the darkness isn't a void, but a veil. And what lies behind it may not be alien, but more familiar than we can imagine. Perhaps we are not the first to wonder. Perhaps we are walking a path that has no end. Because the further we reach, the more we find ourselves surrounded not by answers, but by questions dressed as silence. The universe is not a solved equation. It is a riddle that grows deeper with each clue. And maybe that's the point. Not to solve it, but to seek it, to listen, to wonder, to be shaped by what we don't yet understand. So the next time you look at the night sky and feel comforted by the stars, remember, they are the exception, not the rule. They are sparks floating in an unseen sea. And you too are one of those sparks. A brief flicker of awareness, drifting through a cosmos made almost entirely of things no one has ever touched, no one has ever seen, but that shape your every breath. The mystery isn't out there. You're breathing it. You're built from its rarest pieces. You are the known, staring into the unknown. And maybe that's what it means to exist at all. Not to grasp everything, but to be lit by the contrast between what you know and what you can't yet imagine. To shine for a moment in a darkness that holds everything. You'll never truly know if anyone else is conscious. Imagine standing in front of a window at night, lights off behind you, looking out into a city full of lit windows, each one glowing, alive, hinting at lives unfolding behind the glass. You can see movement, shadows passing, blinds closing, but you don't hear the voices. You don't feel their thoughts. You don't sense their inner world. You only know your own. And this, in essence, is the most quietly disturbing truth about consciousness. You will never truly know if anyone else has it. You will never feel what they feel. You will never be in their mind, not because of a technological limit, or because no one has invented the right tool, but because there is a wall between minds that no science has ever breached, a veil that thought cannot pierce. You can observe behavior, interpret words, read faces, but none of it proves that there's someone inside the skin you're looking at. And once you realize that, the world begins to look eerily hollow, like a stage filled with brilliant actors, perfect in expression, flawless in emotion, yet you cannot shake the possibility that it's all a performance. Not out of deceit, but out of absence. This is the problem of other minds. Not just a philosophical puzzle, but a psychological ache, because no matter how close you are to someone, how much they say they love you, or cry in your presence, or hold your hand through fear, you are still locked inside your own experience, and they are locked in theirs. The bridge between is not certainty, it's trust, and trust, by definition, accepts what it can never verify. We've tried for centuries to crack this mystery. Philosophers posed it as a thought experiment. Scientists approached it like a problem of measurement. Psychologists observed infants, primates, machines. But all roads loop back to the same void. There is no test that confirms consciousness. Not truly. We can measure brain activity, detect emotion, record pain responses, but these are signals, not experience. Lights on a dashboard, not the road being driven. The question isn't whether someone behaves like they're conscious. It's whether there's anything it feels like to be them. And that question collapses the moment you try to answer it from outside. You know what it feels like to be you, to be hungry, ashamed, in awe. But when you look at another person, you see a body, a face, a stream of language. You assume the rest, because the alternative, that no one else feels, that no one else is unbearable. And yet, logically, you can never rule it out. You might be the only locus of awareness in a world of perfect illusions. Other people smile, laugh, scream, but you've seen machines do that too. You've seen actors cry without feeling. You've watched birds mimic human speech. The surface is never the proof. The proof lies underneath, and you can't dig into someone else's experience. It is by nature private, unshareable, entirely internal. This isn't to say others aren't conscious, only that you don't have access to their consciousness. And that distinction matters, because we often behave as if knowing someone means sharing their inner life. But empathy, no matter how deep, is still projection. You simulate their pain through your own memory of pain. You mirror their joy through your own pathways, but you never enter their stream of awareness. You only imagine it, like watching a character in a film and forgetting the story was written. Your brain fills in the blanks so seamlessly that you believe the experience is shared. But it's not. It's mirrored, echoed, guessed. Even in your closest moments, intimacy, grief, love, you are still alone inside your skull. The connection you feel is real, but it's a feeling, not a channel. And that's what makes this topic so haunting. We are wired to assume others are conscious, but we are never allowed to know it. Now imagine this as a room of mirrors. Every person you meet reflects back signs of life, words, gestures, reactions, but behind each mirror is uncertainty. Some may have minds like yours, others may not. There's no way to test it, because any test would only measure the reflection, not the source, and this opens the door to terrifying possibilities. Could someone pass every test of consciousness, yet feel nothing? Could a robot, with perfect mimicry, fool the entire world into believing it was alive, without ever experiencing a single moment? More disturbingly, could a human do the same? What if the people around you, those you admire, those you fear, are as hollow as the dolls they once played with? This isn't paranoia. It's a structural blind spot in how minds work. We are locked inside ourselves, and the doors do not open. But in that isolation, there's also something profound, because the very fact that you feel, that you know what it means to be aware, makes you part of a rare phenomenon, a flicker of subjectivity in a universe otherwise filled with silence. Stars explode, rivers flow, atoms collide, but they do not know. You do. Or at least, you think you do. And that's enough to distinguish you from everything else. You are a window through which existence sees itself. A mirror angled inward. And that is not a small thing. It means you carry something unprovable, but unmistakable. Something private, but precious. And when you look at another person, the best you can do is hope. Hope that behind their eyes is a mirror too. That they, like you, are peering out from within. This is where ethics enters, because if you cannot know who is conscious, you must assume the possibility that everyone is. Not for safety, but for sanity. Because the alternative, treating others as NPCs until proven otherwise, destroys the fragile foundation of meaning. It severs the only thread connecting one inner world to another. So instead, we choose to believe. We speak to others as if they hear. We comfort them as if they suffer. We love them as if their hearts respond. Not because we know they're conscious, but because we want them to be, need them to be. Because a world full of mirrors that never reflect back is not a world we can survive in. And maybe that's the deeper truth. That even though you'll never know if anyone else is conscious, your life depends on acting as if they are, because only then can trust exist. Only then can kindness mean something. Only then can love be more than projection. You can't verify another person's soul, but you can speak to it, sing to it, suffer with it. And in doing so, you shape a world where consciousness matters, even if it hides behind glass. So, no, you'll never truly know if anyone else is conscious, but you'll keep talking, keep reaching, keep believing, because somewhere, in one of those lit windows, someone might be looking back. The brain can't tell the difference between reality and imagination. You close your eyes and picture a flame, not a real one, just an image in your mind. Yet your body responds, your pupils adjust, your skin might even register the imagined warmth. The line between what you envision and what you perceive begins to blur, and this blur is not symbolic, it's neurological. Your brain, in all its complexity, lights up in nearly the same patterns whether you're experiencing something firsthand or simply imagining it. This isn't a poetic exaggeration, it's a measurable truth. Functional MRI scans show that visualizing an object, movement, or memory activates the same brain regions as physically interacting with them. The same neural circuits fire. The same chemistry floods your bloodstream. To your brain, imagination isn't pretend, it's rehearsal. It's reality without the outside world. And once you understand this, everything changes. You begin to question not just the nature of memory and fantasy, but the nature of reality itself. If your brain doesn't distinguish between what you see and what you simulate, then how do you know what's real? And how many of your emotions, your fears, your decisions are built not on the world as it is, but on the world as your mind believes it to be? It helps to think of the brain not as a camera, but as a theater. A theater where every sensation is a performance, staged by internal systems using props from memory, prediction, emotion, and expectation. You don't simply receive reality, you interpret it, construct it, filter it. You sit not in the audience of your senses, but in the projection booth. Light enters your eyes, sound enters your ears, but before anything reaches you, it is processed, edited, narrated. A voice says, "This is red." Another says, "That's danger." Another still whispers, "You felt this before." All of it happens faster than thought, and sometimes, without any external input at all, the brain writes its own scene. A memory, a dream, a fear, and treats it as if it were real. It sends signals to your nervous system, releases hormones, changes your heartbeat. And it doesn't apologize afterward. Because to the brain, activation is truth. If the circuits fire, the experience is real. And this is why a nightmare can leave you sweating. Why a memory can bring tears. Why imagining success can raise your confidence. And imagining rejection can cause actual physical pain. The boundary between what happens outside and what happens inside is paper thin. This idea isn't just fascinating, it's foundational. It explains why trauma leaves scars that aren't visible, why placebo treatments often produce real healing, why anticipating pain can be as agonizing as pain itself. When you rehearse an experience vividly enough, your brain doesn't label it as practice. It processes it like it would a live event, and it wires itself accordingly. This is how neuroplasticity works. Your brain reshapes based on input, regardless of whether that input comes from reality or imagination. The phrase, "thoughts become things," is not mystical, it's anatomical. If you visualize yourself failing over and over, you condition your brain to expect that pattern. If you picture yourself healing, succeeding, reconnecting, the brain leans toward those outcomes as well. Not always in a mystical, manifesting sense, but in a practical, neurological one. Your beliefs mold your responses. Your expectations color your perception. What you imagine becomes the scaffolding of how you live. But this adaptive feature comes with a cost, because just as your brain can use imagination to prepare you, protect you, empower you, it can also trap you. It can replay insults until they scar. It can fabricate dangers that leave you frozen. It can simulate worst-case scenarios so vividly that your body collapses under the weight of situations that never even happened. Anxiety, in its deepest form, is the brain simulating threats in a loop, so convincingly that your body lives them as if they're real. And this leads to exhaustion, burnout, and sometimes despair. You're not weak for feeling this. You're not broken. You're just neurologically loyal to what your imagination keeps rehearsing. Your body is responding to a theater it thinks is real life, and unless you become aware of this dynamic, you might spend years reacting to illusions as though they were reality. Now, imagine the implications of this in everyday life. When someone gives you a dirty look and you imagine they hate you, your body might react with defensiveness, sadness, withdrawal. Not because of what actually happened, but because of the mental movie you built around it. When you anticipate failure before trying, your brain triggers patterns of fear and stress, potentially sabotaging your own performance. And when you long for someone, your mind might construct whole conversations, play back memories, simulate future reunions, leaving your body to experience a cocktail of longing, joy, and grief all at once. None of this is fake. It's simply internally generated. Your nervous system doesn't ask, is this happening in the world? It asks, is this happening in here? And if the answer is yes, the response is real. Hormones shift, muscles tense, thoughts spiral. This is why imagination is both a gift and a responsibility. It gives you access to every future, every memory, every possibility. But it also burdens you with ghosts, phantom futures, rewritten histories. You might live a dozen lifetimes inside your head, some joyful, others horrific, without ever moving an inch. And while that might seem like wasted energy, it's actually how the brain learns. It simulates to prepare, it rehearses to predict, but when left unchecked, the rehearsal becomes the performance, the fiction becomes the script. And the life you live is one that was chosen by reflex, not awareness. Yet this knowledge also opens a door, because if your brain treats imagination like reality, then you can use that. You can visualize not just fear, but courage, not just despair, but healing, not just defeat, but rising again. Athletes do this. Therapists use this. Meditation relies on this. You don't need external proof to begin. You need focus, repetition, intention. The images you feed your brain shape its wiring. The stories you tell yourself become the language your cells speak. So if you're going to imagine something anyway, and you are, why not make it something that serves you? And perhaps this is where science meets something sacred. The realization that your mind is not just a mirror of the world, but a co-creator. That what you imagine clearly, vividly, consistently, can nudge the real world into motion, if only by reshaping how you perceive it. Because perception shapes action, action shapes outcome, and outcome loops back to reinforce belief. It's not magic, it's psychology. But it feels like magic when you break a cycle of fear by simply daring to imagine a different version of yourself. Not a perfect one, just one who tries. So the next time your mind spirals into what-if scenarios, or replays painful scenes, or whispers failure before you begin, remember, your brain isn't trying to hurt you. It's trying to simulate survival. It just doesn't always know what to prioritize. That's your role. You get to direct the scene. You get to choose which simulations deserve the spotlight. And while you may never silence your imagination, you can steer it, gently, intentionally, toward a version of reality that empowers instead of paralyzes. Because in the end, your brain might not know the difference between what you live and what you imagine. But your life will be shaped by both. Everything you perceive is a reconstruction, not the real world. You've never actually seen the world, not directly, not as it is. What you see is a version of the world, processed, filtered, translated, like a painting of a landscape you've never visited, drawn by a mind trying its best to guess what's out there. Every sound you hear, every color you see, every texture you feel isn't the world itself, but your brain's interpretation of electrical signals triggered by contact with it. You don't perceive reality, you perceive a rendering of it, a reconstruction, a simulation built from fragments, stitched together so seamlessly that it fools you into thinking it's real. But just like a map is not the terrain, and a photo is not the person, your experience of the world is not the world. It's a best guess, a user interface designed not for truth, but for survival. And once you see the layers, once you realize how much editing goes into even a single moment of awareness, your certainty starts to crack. You begin to question what you trust, your eyes, your memory, your senses, and the ground beneath your understanding starts to shift. Because if what you perceive is a reconstruction, then reality itself becomes something forever out of reach, something you can only approach, never grasp. Let's begin with something as basic as color. You look at a strawberry and call it red. But red doesn't exist in the strawberry. There are no colors in the external world, only electromagnetic waves of different frequencies. The object reflects certain wavelengths, your eyes absorb them, and your brain assigns a label, red. But red isn't out there. It's in here, in your mind. The world doesn't have color. You do. And that illusion stretches beyond vision. When you hear a bird chirp, what's actually reaching you is a rapid fluctuation in air pressure. Your ears convert that into electrical signals. Your brain then decodes those signals and gives you sound. You're not hearing the bird. You're hearing your brain's translation of vibration. The same goes for smell, taste, touch. Everything you experience is a chain of inferences built on raw data your nervous system interprets. You're not immersed in reality. You're immersed in your brain's interpretation of it. But the deception goes deeper, because your brain doesn't just process input. It fills in gaps, constantly. The world moves too fast, and your senses are too limited to catch everything. So your brain cheats. It smooths over the blind spots in your vision. It guesses what should be behind your blinking. It invents continuity where there is none, and you don't notice because the illusion is designed to be invisible. You feel like you're watching a seamless movie, but the raw footage is patchy, noisy, incomplete. Your brain is editing the film as you watch, cutting and pasting scenes before you're even aware of them. And the editing isn't neutral, it's biased, tilted by memory, emotion, expectation, context. Two people can witness the same event and walk away with entirely different realities. Not because one is lying, but because their brains built different stories, and each one feels true. That's the frightening part. Consider this. Every time you recall a memory, you're not retrieving a file. You're rebuilding it, reconstructing it using fragments, feelings, associations. And each time you do, the memory subtly changes. It drifts, it reshapes. What you remember from your childhood might feel vivid, but it's a collage of guesses and updates. And yet, it feels real. Just like the world outside your window. You believe you see it. You believe it's there. But what you see is a version that has passed through a dozen filters before it reaches your awareness. There is a delay, however brief, between the moment light hits your retina and the moment your brain says tree, cloud, car. And in that delay, editing happens. Reconstruction begins. Meaning is assigned. And you never see the raw footage. You never hear the unprocessed sound. You live in the edited version. This has evolutionary roots. Early humans didn't need to perceive objective truth. They needed to detect food, predators, shelter, social cues. So evolution shaped our senses not for accuracy, but for efficiency, for survival. What you see is not the real world. It's the interface, like icons on a computer screen. When you drag a folder to the trash, you don't need to know how the hard drive rewrites the data. You just need a simple metaphor, a trash can. That's your experience of reality, not the data, the metaphor. And just like an interface hides the complexity beneath, your consciousness hides the messy, raw mechanics of what's really happening out there. You get the summary, the shortcut, the metaphor that lets you function without being overwhelmed. This is why two people can argue over what happened, and both feel absolutely right. They experienced different reconstructions. Their brains built different versions of the event based on different priors, emotions, assumptions, fears. This is why eyewitness testimony is often unreliable, why memories change under pressure, why perception is malleable, even hacked by stress or trauma. And it's not a flaw in design. It's how the system works. Your brain isn't a passive recorder, it's an active builder. And every moment of your life is shaped by what it builds. But once you realize that your perception is a construction, not a reflection, a strange kind of freedom opens up. Because if your experience is malleable, so is your relationship to it. You can't change reality, but you can change how you reconstruct it. You can train your attention, alter your interpretation, influence the story your brain tells. And this is the foundation of everything from mindfulness to cognitive therapy to artistic creation. You are not doomed to a fixed perspective. You are a storyteller with editing rights. And the more aware you become of the reconstruction, the more power you have to shape it consciously, rather than unconsciously repeating the same interpretations over and over. Still, this insight comes with humility. It means you must doubt your certainty. Because the world you see, the people you judge, the problems you face, might be different than you believe. Your anger, your fear, your craving, your assumptions. Each one might be rooted in a perceived world, not the actual one. And while that doesn't make your feelings invalid, it makes them worth examining. Because if your brain is building the world, then questioning the blueprint might change what you see. So the next time you walk into a room and feel rejected or praised or threatened, pause. Ask, is this what's really happening? Or is this my reconstruction? Is this the world as it is? Or the world as I've been taught to see it? Your answer might not come easily, but the asking itself breaks the illusion. And once the illusion cracks, you gain a rare kind of awareness, not of the world itself, but of the lens you're using to view it. And sometimes that's enough to shift everything. Because in the end, your brain's job is not to show you truth, it's to keep you alive. But your job, once you become aware, is different. Your job is to see clearly, to recognize that every thought, every sensation, every memory is a reconstruction, a story being told to you by you. And while the raw world may remain unreachable, your perception of it is yours to reshape. Thought by thought, frame by frame, not to escape reality, but to engage with it more honestly. To peel back the surface and begin to ask the quiet, unsettling question beneath all awareness. Not what is out there, but what am I choosing to see? What you see has already happened. You live in delay. Imagine watching a live broadcast with a tiny, unnoticeable lag. The game's already been played, but you're still cheering, reacting, thinking it's unfolding in real time. Now imagine that this isn't just your TV, but your life. Every moment you see, every movement you track, every face you look into, it's already happened. You're always a few milliseconds behind reality, not metaphorically, literally. The world you perceive has already moved forward by the time your brain finishes constructing the image. You're chasing the present, but never quite catching it. And the delay, though small, is a revelation. Because it means your experience of now is a beautifully edited playback, stitched together from light, sound, memory, and expectation. You are not living in the present. You are living in the echo of it. And once you grasp this, your sense of control, certainty, and immediacy begins to dissolve. Because you realize you've never truly seen the world as it is, only as it was. Let's break down the timeline. Light from an object enters your eyes and hits your retina. That information is converted into electrical signals and sent to your brain. Your brain then processes those signals, adds context, fills in gaps, and finally delivers a finished picture to your conscious awareness. The entire process takes about 80 milliseconds. That doesn't sound like much, less than a blink. But in a world that moves as fast as ours, it's significant. By the time you react to something visually, that thing is already gone. You're not seeing the punch, you're seeing where it was. You're not watching the bird fly, you're watching its ghost trail. Even when you speak, your brain started preparing the words before you were aware of the impulse. You're always just slightly behind the steering wheel of your own life, close enough to feel in control, far enough to never be truly in sync. This delay isn't a glitch, it's a feature, a safety buffer. Your brain isn't built for speed, it's built for meaning, for comprehension, and comprehension takes time. Rather than showing you a raw, messy stream of input, your brain prefers to curate. It prioritizes coherence over accuracy. It smooths the moment. It makes things make sense, even if that means lying about when they happened, and you never notice, because you're locked inside the illusion. You think you're reacting in real time. You think your decisions are instantaneous. But every moment you live is already a memory by the time it registers. You're the narrator of a story being told on a slight delay. And the more you look for the seam, the more you begin to sense it. In déjà vu, in slow motion fear, in the eerie gap between thought and action. Sports scientists have observed this in athletes. A baseball batter, for example, doesn't have enough time to react to a 95 mph pitch after it's been thrown. The brain can't process and respond that fast. So what does it do? It guesses. It predicts the trajectory based on prior patterns. It moves the body in anticipation, not reaction. And most of the time, it works. But sometimes, the prediction is wrong. And when that happens, the batter misses, not because of poor reflexes, but because they were reacting to the wrong version of the future. This predictive mechanism isn't limited to athletes, it's in everyone. Your brain is a forecaster. It paints the present by blending past data with best guesses about what should be happening now. The you that responds to the world is a product of this lag-adjusted forecast, and yet, because it feels seamless, you trust it. This temporal lag also explains strange phenomena. Have you ever felt like your body moved before you consciously decided to? That's because it did. Neuroscience shows that the brain's readiness potential, a buildup of electrical activity before voluntary movement, occurs hundreds of milliseconds before you're aware of making a decision. Your brain starts the action, then sends the "you chose this" signal afterward. Free will in that light becomes not a command, but a commentary, a post-event explanation. Like a sports announcer describing a play that's already occurred. You feel like the author, but you're the narrator, and the story is already underway. Even emotions live in delay. When you feel sudden fear, the response is triggered before you understand why. A noise, a movement, a shadow. Your body jolts, your heart races, and only later does your mind construct a reason. That looked like a snake. But by then, the reaction has already come and gone. The cause is retrofitted, the fear arrived first, and the explanation was fabricated to make it feel like a choice, like something you understood. This post hoc rationalization is your brain's way of keeping the illusion of continuity intact. You didn't flinch because of randomness. You flinched because you knew. Except you didn't. You just caught the echo and built a story around it. But what happens when we zoom out and apply this concept to our lives as a whole? If every perception is delayed, then every assumption built on those perceptions is also slightly off. The way you remember someone's expression, the way you interpret a tone of voice, the way you respond to danger or joy, it's all based on data that's already expired. Your understanding of the world is always catching up, and yet you make decisions, form beliefs, build relationships, all from within a loop that's slightly behind the present. This doesn't mean your life is a lie, but it does mean it's a story, and that story is based on what just happened, not what's happening now. This understanding can lead to anxiety or liberation. If you expect your reactions to always be perfect, instantaneous, fully in tune with the moment, you'll be frustrated. But if you accept the delay, you gain clarity. You give yourself space. You stop expecting yourself to be flawless in the moment and instead become aware of the lag. That awareness lets you pause, recalibrate, make room for a second look, a second thought, a second chance. Because the first reaction is always a step behind, but the second can be a step ahead. Metaphorically, it's like living in a train car with soundproof windows. You see the trees passing, the landscape shifting, but you don't hear the train. You don't feel its true speed. Everything feels slower than it is, quieter, more composed. And then, sometimes, you get a jolt, a sudden swerve or noise that reminds you, this thing is moving faster than you thought. Your perception is a passenger, the train is reality. And you're always a little behind the curve. But knowing that doesn't weaken your experience, it sharpens it. It makes you attentive, curious. It reminds you to be gentle with your assumptions and more intentional with your reactions. So next time someone startles you, or a memory shifts, under pressure, or a decision feels both instant and inexplicable, remember, you're living in delay. But that delay isn't a curse, it's a mirror. It shows you how your mind works, how it assembles the world. And that insight, once seen, clearly, lets you step just a little closer to truth. Not by racing to catch the present, but by understanding why you're always just behind it. The universe might be fine-tuned for conscious life. Picture a vast cosmic safe, the kind you see in spy films. It has dozens of dials, hundreds of switches, each one representing a different fundamental constant of the universe. One dial sets the strength of gravity, another determines the mass of the electron, another the expansion rate of space. Every setting must be precise, down to decimal points that make human precision seem like finger painting. Now imagine that this safe, against impossible odds, has been opened, not by accident, but perfectly aligned to allow life. Not just atoms, Not just stars, but consciousness, awareness, you. And suddenly you have to ask the question most people spend their lives avoiding. Is it a fluke, or is it a clue? The idea that the universe might be fine-tuned for life, specifically for conscious life, is not philosophy dressed in mystery. It's physics rubbing up against awe. Let's start with what fine-tuning really means. In the equations that govern the cosmos, the constants, like the speed of light, the gravitational constant, the strength of the strong nuclear force, are not arbitrary. They are fixed, but they didn't have to be. The equations could have had different values. And here's the catch. Even the slightest tweak to some of these numbers would render the universe lifeless. If gravity were just a hair stronger, stars would burn out too fast. A touch weaker, and stars wouldn't form at all. If the strong nuclear force were marginally different, atoms wouldn't hold together. If the expansion rate of the universe had been just a little faster after the Big Bang, matter would have flown apart, and galaxies never formed. We live, it seems, in a narrow habitable zone, not just on Earth, but in physics itself, like balancing a pencil on its tip for billions of years, and somehow it stays upright. This isn't mystical speculation. It's an observable tension in the fabric of cosmology. The constants of nature appear suspiciously just right, and they're not just right for any kind of universe. They're right for a universe that contains observers. This is where consciousness enters the frame. Because the laws of physics don't just permit atoms, they permit thoughts. They allow for organisms to develop senses, self-awareness, morality, and meaning. And if that doesn't unsettle you, you haven't understood it. It's one thing for a universe to permit planets and suns. It's another for it to permit Shakespeare, Mozart, the feeling of falling in love, the taste of strawberries, the sound of rain. The question isn't just, why is the universe habitable? It's, why is it so richly habitable that life not only survives, but wonders? Some argue it's just coincidence, that there are trillions of universes, and we just happen to be in the one that works. Like buying a billion lottery tickets and being shocked that one of them won. This is the multiverse theory, an infinite field of universes, each with different constants, most sterile, most dead, but some, like ours, teeming with possibility. In this view, we're not special, just lucky. Like a fish marveling at how perfectly water supports swimming, forgetting that fish can't live where water isn't. But there's another possibility, one that feels dangerous to speak aloud because it edges close to design. What if the universe wasn't just one among many, but built this way, either by necessity or intention? What if consciousness isn't an accident of matter, but its goal? That's the unsettling edge of the fine-tuning idea. It suggests that reality, from the moment of its birth, was tilted toward awareness. That atoms yearn to become brains, that the laws of nature were coded to give rise not just to movement, but to meaning. This doesn't require belief in a god or an engineer. It only requires acknowledging how fragile this arrangement is. Think of it like tuning a violin. If any string is off, the melody collapses. Our universe sings in perfect harmony, not just by having instruments, but by allowing a song to emerge. A song that hears itself. That's the miracle. Not just that life exists, but that life can ask why. That the universe is not silent, but self-aware, through us. Some physicists have tried to explain fine-tuning away. Maybe the constants aren't fundamental. Maybe deeper laws explain why they are what they are. But every explanation just pushes the question back a level. Why those deeper laws? Why that framework? It's turtles all the way down. And eventually, you're left staring into the unknown with one persistent, childlike question burning in your chest. Why this? Why anything at all? Now shift the metaphor. Imagine a locked room. You wake up inside. The air is breathable. The temperature is perfect. There's food on the table. A book written in your language. You could assume it's chance, that the room just happened to suit you. But the longer you stay, the more it feels like you were expected. That your presence was anticipated. That the room was made not just to contain you, but to welcome you. That's what fine-tuning feels like. Like waking up in a universe that feels suspiciously like it wanted you to wake up in it. And here's the kicker. Even if the universe wasn't fine-tuned for life, we'd never know. Because only in a universe that supports consciousness would there be anyone asking the question, This is called the anthropic principle. It says, don't be surprised you're in a life-friendly universe because you couldn't be in a dead one. It's like walking into a party and being amazed there's music. Of course there is. If there weren't, you wouldn't be there. But this explanation feels like an escape hatch. It explains the existence of life without explaining the strangeness of the fit. Because when you look closer, the fit is too good. Not just tolerable, beautiful, elegant. The math of the cosmos doesn't just permit life, it dances with it. Equations that govern particles also govern galaxies. The same laws that keep atoms stable make stars burn. There's unity, grace, a sense of architecture. And in that architecture, you don't just find space and time. You find wonder, reflection, the urge to understand itself. And that's the twist. Perhaps the universe doesn't just allow consciousness. Perhaps it requires it. Perhaps awareness is not a byproduct, but a completion. This changes how you see yourself. You are not a meaningless blip on a cosmic timeline. You are the lens through which the universe observes itself. You are the moment physics becomes poetry, chemistry becomes curiosity, biology becomes a voice asking, who am I? Your existence is not a triviality. It is a culmination, a point on a graph that couldn't have existed unless the rest of the plot lined up just so. And that means your questions matter. Your thoughts ripple backward through stars and quarks and entropy, echoing the one question all of reality might be whispering to itself. What am I for? Maybe we'll never know. Maybe it's all an accident. But if it is, it's the most meaningful accident in the history of everything. And if it's not, if there is some deeper purpose, some hidden reason why the constants line up just so, then every breath you take is a part of that purpose. Every act of kindness, every poem, every idea, it's not just human, it's cosmic. It's the universe fulfilling the conditions it set at the beginning of time through you. So whether you believe we're lucky or chosen, or simply here by default, one truth remains: the universe works. It works so well, it birthed minds that can recognize how well it works. And in that recognition, something miraculous happens. Not in the stars, not in the equations, but in the awareness between them. The awareness that says, this is not just a place to live. This is a place to wake up. There might be infinite versions of you in other universes. Imagine standing at a hallway lined with mirrors, not just two mirrors facing each other, but thousands stacked side by side, each reflecting a slightly different version of you. One mirror shows you with a different haircut, another wearing different clothes, a third standing beside someone you never met in this life. As you step forward, the reflections become stranger. In one, you're smiling at a stranger who feels familiar. In another, you're wearing a uniform you never owned, holding a trophy you've never won. The hallway stretches on endlessly, and the unsettling realization sets in. These are not reflections, they are realities. Each one as valid as the life you're living right now. Each one a version of you that took a different path. And suddenly, your sense of self begins to fracture, not into confusion, but into expansion. Because if the universe is infinite, then so are you. This idea isn't just science fiction. It's rooted in the unsettling implications of quantum physics and cosmology. In quantum mechanics, particles don't commit to a single state until they're observed. Until then, they exist in a superposition, multiple possibilities at once. The famous double-slit experiment showed that particles act like waves of probabilities until someone looks. Once observed, the wave collapses into a definite outcome. But the many worlds interpretation, one of the leading explanations, proposes something more radical. It suggests that the wave function doesn't collapse. Instead, every possible outcome happens in separate parallel universes. When you flip a coin, in one universe it lands heads. In another, tails. In yet another, it flips forever. And the same principle might apply to you. Your choices, your regrets, your unlived lives. If that's true, then right now, in this moment, there are countless versions of you walking different roads. Some are almost identical. Same thoughts, same memories. Just one breath ahead or behind. Others are wildly different. In one, you moved to that city you only dreamed of. In another, you never met the person who broke your heart. In a third, you pursued the passion you abandoned for safety. And in a fourth, you're not even human. Each version unfolds like a branch on a cosmic tree, growing outward with every decision, every possibility, every particle interaction. You are not a single line. You are a multiverse of potential. It's tempting to think of these other versions as what-ifs or fantasies. But according to the physics, they are just as real as this one. You just happen to be experiencing this thread. Consciousness, in this view, is not fixed to one universe. It's a flashlight sweeping across pages of a book where all the stories exist simultaneously. Your awareness makes one narrative feel real, but the others are still there, running in parallel just out of reach. And if you could somehow shift your attention, like tuning a radio, you might wake up in a different life with no memory of the one you're in now. That life wouldn't feel alternate. It would feel like the only one. And maybe that's already happened. Many times. Now the metaphysical implications begin to ripple. If there are infinite versions of you, each making different choices, what does that mean for free will? Are you the author of your life? Or just one version of yourself reading one outcome? It's easy to feel disoriented. But there's also something liberating in this idea. It means that no single decision defines you completely. That mistakes don't lock you in. That possibility is a law, not a luxury. It means that for every door you didn't open, there is a version of you who did. For every goodbye you regret, another you said yes. You are not the sum of one story. You are the intersection of countless narratives, and the paradox deepens. Because while this may sound empowering, it also introduces a kind of existential vertigo. If all outcomes happen, what does it matter what you choose? Why strive? Why care? But the truth is, your experience is still real. You still feel pain, joy, regret, love. Your story matters because you are living it. Even if there are others, even if there are infinite paths, this one is yours. And perhaps that's what gives it meaning. Not its uniqueness, but your presence within it. Think of the multiverse like a library. Infinite books on infinite shelves. Each book is your life, written differently. Some are thrillers, some are tragedies. Some are so similar they differ by a single sentence. Others are unrecognizable, but you can only read one at a time. Your consciousness is the reader. And even if the other books exist, this is the one, you're inside. And so the question is not, which is the real you, but what will you do with the page you're on? This idea has been echoed in art, in religion, in dreams. The concept of parallel selves is ancient. In some myths, there are spirit doubles, shadow selves, astral twins. In dreams, you might visit places you've never been, speak languages you don't know, live lifetimes in seconds. What if those aren't creations, but glimpses? What if your mind, in sleep or silence, crosses universes without knowing? What if déjà vu is not memory, but resonance? Two versions of you brushing past each other for a flicker of time. The psychological weight of this realization can be profound. You start to see yourself not as a single identity, but as a pattern, a structure that repeats with variations, and that reframes everything. When you fail, you remember. Somewhere, you succeeded. When you hesitate, you remember. Someone with your face was brave. When you feel alone, you realize, across the stars, you are never alone. You are everywhere. And that thought, though cosmic, can be intimate, because it reminds you that you are not trapped. You are not doomed by your past. You are fluid, but be careful. This isn't an excuse to escape accountability. You can't say, another version of me made the right choice so I don't have to. That's like watching another person exercise and expecting to get fit. Your actions here still shape your experience. This is your branch of the tree. You water it or you don't. You write or you erase. The other versions may exist, but they are not living this moment. Only you are. So what do you do with this knowledge? You stop living like your story is fixed. You stop treating your life like a narrow hallway and start seeing it as a field. A vast open field of choices, each one blossoming in different directions. You stop fearing regret, not because it disappears, but because it no longer defines you. And you start to walk forward with curiosity, not certainty. Because if the multiverse is real, then life is not a sentence. It's a language, and every version of you is speaking a different dialect of the same truth. I am possible, and maybe, just maybe, somewhere out there, another you is listening. Your memory is rewritten every time you recall it. Think of your memory like a soft wax tablet rather than a locked vault. Each time you press into it, each time you revisit a moment, it reshapes. Not intentionally, not maliciously, but subtly, quietly. A small edge blurs, a detail shifts, a sound that never happened is suddenly there. A glance becomes a stare. A neutral phrase takes on a tone. You don't notice the change because the new version feels just as real, sometimes more so, but it's no longer the memory you once had. Every recollection is a rewrite, not a replay. Your mind is not retrieving a file, it's repainting a scene, and with each stroke, it introduces variations that blend with what you believe is truth. And just like that, memory transforms into myth. We like to think of memories as frozen snapshots, clean, crisp, preserved. But neuroscience paints a different picture. Memories are reconstructions, not recordings. When you remember something, your brain doesn't retrieve a perfect image. It rebuilds the experience from fragments, bits of sight, sound, emotion, and context, and assembles them into a coherent story. It uses clues from the present to fill in the gaps from the past, and in doing so, it often alters the original. The more emotionally charged a memory is, the more it gets rehearsed, and paradoxically, the more it becomes vulnerable to distortion. Your most vivid memories, the ones you're sure are accurate, may be the most revised. One of the most striking studies on memory distortion came from psychologist Elizabeth Loftus. In her research, she demonstrated how easily people's recollections could be manipulated. By simply changing a word in a question, she could alter a subject's memory of a car crash. How fast were the cars going when they smashed into each other? Led to higher speed estimates